Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. So I'll continue, right? Should I write continue? Yes. Continue. All right. We have started actually Pirke Avot. We're reading Pirke Avot now at the end of every Shabbat. And it's a custom to read Pirke Avot between Pesach and Shavuot, the 7 weeks. And so we read the chapters of Pirke Avot between this, and they have to make it up at the end. In the end, we sort of stuff a few chapters together, but we read Pirke Avot. Now in Chabad, we also have the custom of reading not just between Pesach and Shavuot, between Pesach and Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah, we stop. So why do we read it now in this time? Because now, first of all, it's a summer. Now it's coming the summer, and in the summertime, there's more stirring of bodily, physical things. The day is longer, more physical activity. And Pirke Avot, the idea of Pirke Avot, is called the chapters of the fathers. Pirke Avot, the chapters of the fathers. And what they are is teaching us how to have a proper attitude toward life, how to have a Jewish attitude toward life. And of course, that means based according to the Torah. But the Torah is not enough. A person can learn the Torah and have a terrible attitude toward life. In fact, the Torah can even make him worse. Sometimes the Torah can make a person even more of an egotist. It can make him feel that he's superior to everybody. They make a joke. They say, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. If you learn the Torah, some people say you can be against everybody. If you learn the Torah can make great divisions. Some people are more religious, some people are less religious, some people have customs like this. In fact, the whole entire Torah is just arguments. We see that arguments from the time of Moses, people argued against Moshe as soon as before he got the Torah, the Jews didn't want to receive it. After he received the Torah, the Jews were complaining all the time. They worshiped the golden calf. So the Torah is really there in order to make peace in the world. That's the purpose of the Torah, to make peace in the world. But peace means uniting all opposites. And that's really what the Torah is here for. And that's what Pirke Avot is here for. Why is it called Pirke Avot, the chapters of the fathers? Just say it's chapters in how to improve your personality or self-improvement or something. Why is it called of the fathers? So the ones who are speaking over here, it starts off with Moshe, that Moshe gave the Torah to Yeshua, and Yeshua, he passed it on to the elders, and the elders to the prophets. Because all these people they're the fathers of Judaism. What does it mean that the fathers of Judaism? That they're completely devoted to our Father, to Hashem. We're all the Jewish people are the sons of God. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. And all these people, they're the representatives of God, who God is called Av HaRachman, a merciful Father. And not only that, the Father gives birth. So they also give birth to the new generations of people who learn Torah. Also, a father has to watch out for his children. So the fathers, they're teaching us, we're like the children. And they're also called fathers because the father implies more generations. So they pass it down to the next generation. And in fact, you see that all of the people that are mentioned, they're all called fathers, even though that they're most of them are just offspring. I mean, they're really only, you can say the only real father of all of them was Moshe. He was the father, and everybody that came after him was an offspring. But they're all called fathers because they all gave birth to new generations and new generations and new generations of Jews until this finally now. So their teachings are the teachings of a father to a son. And also the fact that we're still Jews that believe in God is because they were our fathers. And also because they're the representatives of our Father in heaven, of Hashem. And the reason that we say this now is in order to, the several reasons is, like I said, the summertime, which makes the physical, there's a domination of the physical more. It's a time of less spirituality. Usually in the winter, things are more spiritual. There's more nighttime. You have more time to introvert. And the summer, everything is more extroverted. So you're dealing with the world. And we'll see in a moment that that's the whole thing with the first law that it says in the Pirke Avot is that the Anshe Knesset Gadol said three things. It said three things. You should have to have a lot of pupils, and you have to be slow in judgment, and etc. And we'll see what those three things are in a moment. But it's unnecessary, really, to say that they said three things. We just look afterwards, and it says what the three things are, right? It says clearly what those three things are. That you have to have a lot of pupils, you have to be patient when you make laws, and when you make judgments, and that you have to stand up a lot of pupils, and that you have to make a fence around the Torah. It says three things. Why does it say they said three things, and then it says what the three things are? This relates also to what it's going to say later on. Look at three things, and you won't come to do a sin, and then it says what the three things are. So any fool can tell that it's three things. Why does it have to say three things? So the Rebbe said this is a separate law. That because of these avos, is we always have to look at three things. And that's the purpose of these Pirke Avot, these laws of personality laws, philosophical outlook, practical attitude laws, not monetary laws or the other laws of damages or laws of the holidays or laws of marriage. These are laws only to deal with a person's character. And in order to really a person develop his character, a person has to always look at three things. And a person has, that's what he says, Heim Omu Shlosh Devarim. They spoke about three things. Heim Omu Shlosh Devarim. They spoke about three things. And this is a big lesson for us, what we have to do. And this is what Pirke Avot, these teachings of our fathers, what they enable us to do. And what are the three things? A person always has to be aware of God, Hashem, the giver of the Torah, the creator of the world, the one who enlivens the world, the king of the world. And we have to be aware of another thing is ourselves, the Jewish people, how precious every Jew is. Like we're going to see, every Jew has a place in the world to come. And finally, the last thing is we have to look at the world. So a person always has to look at these three things. Pirke Avot deals with these three things. God, a person, and the world. A person that doesn't always have these three things in his mind, he's not going to have a good character. There's some people that can be super religious all the time for God, and they think about God all the time, and they think about themselves, but they don't think about the world. They become very selfish. Then there's people who think about themselves, they want to be improved, and they think about the world, but they don't think about God, so they don't know what to do in the world. The world always has too much of an influence on them. Or some people, it could be that they look at God and they look at the world, but they forget about themselves. They go and they fast, they go and they get far away, they don't want to get married, they don't care about themselves at all. That's also not proper. A person has to be healthy, has to be happy. So the only way to be happy and to really find meaning is if you have these three things. You have to have God, that He makes the values. You have to have yourself. You have to have the world. The world is the place that makes these values real. It's the place where you find meaning in the physical world. So there has to be these three things all the time involved, and that's what the Pirke Avot do. Pirke Avot, they take values and principles and ideals and how do you say spiritual meaning and brings it through you and your interaction with the world into actual being. So you become a better person and the world becomes better, and You make God happy. Nachat ruach, you give pleasure to God. So it starts off what it says that the Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Now it's known that Moshe, and then it said that Moshe received the Torah from Mount Sinai and he gave it to Yehoshua. Moshe, as you know, did not go into the land of Israel. He gave it to Yeshua. And Yeshua, he set up Israel, divided it all up, conquered it almost completely. And he gave over the Torah to what's called the Zakanim, the elders. Now this lasted a long time. The elders, they went up to the prophets. Now from Yeshua to the prophets, usually the first prophet is Shmuel. So that was about 450 years. And then Shmuel, he gave it over, he was the first of the prophets. So first of all, Moshe received the Torah. He gave it over to Yeshua. Yeshua gave it over to the elders who carried it out for about 450 years. Then they gave it to the prophets who carried it out for another approximately 500 years, for also about 450 years, until the later prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, that they were already in the beginning. They were part of the Anshe Knesset Gadol, the men of the Great Assembly. And this Pirke Avot starts off with a saying of the men of the Great Assembly. They said three things. And like I explained to you, why three things? It means God and yourself and the world. And what were these three things that they said? They said, make a lot of pupils. You should be patient when you judge. You should make a lot of pupils, and you should make a fence around the Torah. God willing, we'll have time. This time we'll talk about what those three things are. But let's just go back into one very... This is talking about the Torah. The Torah is very interesting. The Torah is what has kept the Jewish people together. There's always been all these breakaway groups from the Torah. There were what we call the Tzadukim, the Sadducees, they call it. We see in the Torah itself that there was Korach. He went against Moshe, made a whole rebellion. After that, there were other breakaway groups that came. The Christians also were one of the biggest ones. All these groups that they went against the Torah, usually what they did was they went against the interpretation of the Torah. They would accept the Torah. It was very hard not to accept the Torah because the Jews read the Torah in public since it was given by Moshe. When the Jews went into exile, they went into Babylon, so they took the Torah with them. And they were always reading from the Torah. And they always had Torah scrolls. That was called the written Torah. And everywhere they went, they always managed to smuggle out written Torahs, so that everybody knew exactly what the Torahs were. And then if a person, they would read it in public, a person made a mistake, and everyone would correct him. According to most opinions, Moses, he declared that the Torah should be read once, some people say 3 times a week. Once on Shabbat, you read the whole entire portion, and then a little bit of that you read on Sundays and Thursdays, Mondays and Thursdays, I'm sorry. So the Torah was always read, the written Torah. But the oral Torah, how you interpret it, what exactly the 10 Commandments means, don't kill, don't steal, maybe it means don't kill bacteria, maybe don't steal means don't steal time. Who knows what it means? So everybody interprets it the way they want to. And that's how the enemies of the Torah, the enemies of Judaism, always tried to destroy Judaism, whether willfully or unwillingly. Whether that was their desire, it wasn't their desire, but still that was in fact what they really did. They tried to, so it always went against the oral Torah. Now in order for the oral Torah, when Moshe came down with the Torah, so you couldn't understand anything that was written there. You could understand all the words, but it just didn't make any sense. What does it mean? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah, for instance, the 10 Commandments, which day is Shabbat. 6 days you should work, And one day keep Shabbat. So maybe only one time in your life you should work for 6 days, and then one day rest, and that's it. You've done the Shabbat. And what are you supposed to do on Shabbat? It says don't do any work. What does it mean, work? So nothing is really understandable, and there are certain things that are totally not understandable. For instance, the 10 Commandments says don't steal. That's really referring to don't kidnap. The commandment against stealing money, that's later on, lo tignovo. It's a different place. So things that seem to be obvious are not, and things that are not obvious, right? Things that are not obvious are totally not understandable. So therefore, with the whole essence of what Judaism is, in other words, to do what God really wants you to, means that you have to do according to what's called the oral, you want to call it tradition, not a nice word, according to the oral Torah. These are things that God told Moses orally, and then Moses had to pass it down to the people. And there's a lot of things that God passed down to Moshe, and he wanted the pupils of later generation, the Talmudic scholars of later generations, that they should interpret it properly. That's why we have all the Talmud. If you look and you read the Talmud, you see that all of a sudden comes somebody, Rabbin comes from Israel, and he gives what he thinks, and there's Abaye, and there's Rabbah, and there's Rev Yossi, and all these different people are arguing, Reish Lakish and Rev Yochanan. All of these people had said that were the ones who interpreted the Torah. These all are people that their main quality was fear of God. They were really, truly afraid of doing something God doesn't want. Not because of any personal punishment. They were afraid to go against God's will. They had such an awe and such an awareness of God. And of course, what is God's will? It's the Torah. And here he gave it to us. So they were very, very, to the point of like being prophets. All of these people. So in fact, all of them were in a way above the prophets. It said there was nobody. Ezra was as great as Moshe. Ezra was basically rated by the end of the prophets. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Moshe, he received the Torah from Mount Sinai. Why does it say Moshe received the Torah from God? So it said because everybody knows he received it from God. What it means is that he received it from Mount Sinai. He received from God the lesson. Why did God give the Torah on Mount Sinai? Because why didn't he give it in a plain? Or why didn't he just give it? So he says, because Sinai was the lowest of all the mountains, but it was a mountain. In other words, a person must be humble, but not so humble that people step on him. He must be humble with the Torah. But the Torah gives us a certain certainty that we have to stand for the Torah and be very positive. But it has to be in a humble way. It can't be because what we want. It has to be what Hashem wants. But once Hashem is, when we know what God wants, then we have to be like a mountain. We have to be a mountain, but it has to be a small mountain. And that's what Moshe received. He received the Torah from Sinai. The Torah gives us the power, gives us power. Hashem ozlam oitim. God gave us power. But on the other hand, he gave his power to Moshe, as Moshe was the most humble person in the world. Ha'ish Moshe anav mikol adam al penei adama. He was the most humble person in the world because he realized, we also should realize, and Moshe, it's a gift from Moses, that everything we have and everything we are is all a gift from God. And the biggest gift we have is free will. And maybe a bigger gift within that is that we have responsibility to use that free will properly. We can't use it properly. So Moshe, that's what we see from Moshe. He received Misham Sinai. He got the Torah from Sinai. He got this attitude, and he gave it to Yeshua. So Moshe, he's the aspect, like we said, you have to look at three things. One is God and the Torah and the world. God, man, and the world. Three things. So first of all, we have God. That's Moshe. Moshe received the Torah from God. Moshe was a Ish Elokim. It says in Parshas Zot HaBracha, Zot the Torah, Zot HaBracha, Shebarach Moshe, Moshe Ish Elokim. Moshe was a man God. Ish Elokim. And it says in the Midrash that what does it mean that Moshe, half of Moshe, says the top half of Moshe was God, and the bottom half was man. In other words, he was totally devoted to Hashem to the degree that God spoke through his mouth. The whole book of Deuteronomy was spoken purely by Moshe. The whole book of Deuteronomy, the fifth book of the Torah, Devorim, it doesn't say one time, and God spoke to Moshe, Vayadaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. Everything was there. Moshe said it himself when he said, if you do my commandments, I will give the rains in their time. What we say in Shema Yisrael, that was Moshe saying it. And everyone knew that it was not Moshe saying it. Everyone knew that this was God saying, if you do my commandments, I will give you the rain. That God was speaking through Moshe. So Moshe was a purely God person. And then the Torah came down. Afterwards, Moshe came to Yoshua. Yoshua, he was the Indian of lo mishmi, lo mashmi tocha oel, that Yoshua, his whole thing was receiving the Torah from Moshe. It was a person that he received the Torah from Moshe. So we have the three things you have to look at: Hashem, Torah and man, and the world. Moshe, he was God, godliness. Yoshua, he was total surrender to Moshe. Surrender to Moshe. He was a man, a human being, and he received the Torah, total surrender to Moshe. He gave it over to people that were called the elders. Elders are people who mizu chacham, mizu zaken, shekona chachma. Elders are people also that they have wisdom. They sat and they learned. They sat and they learned the Torah, to understand the Torah, to grasp the Torah. They have the wisdom of the Torah, the surrender of the Torah, but their main thing is understanding the Torah. And he gave it over then to the prophets. They gave it over to the prophets. Prophets are people that they have all the attributes that of Yeshua, that he was totally devoted to Moshe, and also the elders that they sat and they learned, but they were a little bit lower level. They were already coming down a little bit more close to the world. And so the thing of a prophet is that he has to have the help of God. A prophet is a person that godliness comes through him. Everything that he has is a gift. He feels that it's a gift from godliness. So this is Torah, but the help of God in the Torah. And that was the idea of the prophets. In the time of the prophets, that was mostly in the first temple. The Jewish people, everybody knew the Torah. It was just a few hundred years from Mount Sinai. Everybody knew the Torah. They knew there were amazing miracles. They had the first temple. But they forgot about God. The first temple. The Torah was there, but there was no godliness in the Torah. The prophets, therefore, they came and they said to everybody, return to God. Remember the godliness in the Torah. Because the people did not listen to the prophets, so therefore the first temple was destroyed. And when the first temple was destroyed, that took all of the happiness from Judaism. And there came just one moment. I'll call you up in 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. I'll call you up. Oh yes, so that was the idea of the prophets. And the prophets then, the temple was destroyed. In the last period of the prophets, the temple was destroyed. So like I said, Moshe, he received the Torah 40 years later, 40 years later, he gave it to Yeshua. Yeshua then gave it over to the elders. They lasted for about 450 years. The elders, from the time of the judges. Then the first temple was built by King Solomon for another approximately 480, 90 years until the second temple was rebuilt. The first temple was destroyed, the second temple was built. That was the time of the prophets, and they gave it over after the second temple was destroyed. After the first temple was destroyed and after the second temple was rebuilt, they gave it over to the men of the Great Assembly. The men of the Great Assembly were mostly in the time when the second temple was rebuilt onwards. The prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and also Mordechai in the star of the Megillah, and there was Ezra HaSofer, Nehemiah ben Chachlai. They were all the members of the Great Assembly. According to one opinion, there was 85 of them, and according to the other opinion, there was 120. But these men of the Great Assembly, they lasted for about 200 years, 250 years, something like that, into the Second Temple. And their whole thing was to make a fence around the Torah. They say these three things. They're going to say these three things. The main thing, why were they called the men of the Great Assembly? The Great Assembly. It says after the temple was destroyed, after the first temple was destroyed, so the Jews gave up. Jews gave up. I mean, in a way, the destruction of the first temple, the second temple also, but the first temple was in a way worse than the Holocaust. Because in the Holocaust, all the Jews weren't all together, and Jews had a place to run away to. And in the first temple, when it was destroyed, all the Jews were together. They were all in the land of Israel, and every Jew felt immediately the destruction of the temple. In the Holocaust, there were Jews that were in America. They didn't know, some even didn't care and care less. They had no feeling or awareness of what was going on, or at least they said they didn't. And there was places to run away to. You could run away. I mean, even though not very many Jews succeeded in running away, but at least they could. They could make their way to Israel. Some made their way to, I don't know, the Philippines or something. But in the time of the temple, there was nowhere to run to. That was it. You were stuck. They were all taken, either they were taken into prisoners, or the stragglers, whatever they left behind. The whole Jewish people was smitten. Everyone felt it. Their whole temple, the holy temple, was destroyed. Everybody was religious, and they saw what they received. According to some opinions, there was more of a percentage of Jews were killed in the first temple, and certainly in the second temple, than was in the Holocaust. But that's not our point. Enough were killed. Even if one was killed, that's too many. Nevertheless, it was a tremendous tragedy, and even worse, it never had happened before. You know, all the Jewish people, they had been succeeding, and suddenly the whole temple was destroyed. The Jewish people were all taken into prisoner. So they said, you know, that's it. God has left us. They used to say, a gadol hagibur v'hanora, and they say God is not Nora. He's not awesome, and he's not a power. He's not powerful. Look at the non-Jews are dancing around where the temple is. So the Anshe Knesset, the Gadola, they came back and they told the people, not only do not give up, but if you look carefully, you will see that the fact that Jewish people still exist, despite all of what we've done to God and what the non-Jews had permission to do to us, and here we are, we're still existing and we're still living the Torah, this is a bigger miracle than any of the other miracles. No other nation that if they were taken into captivity and their whole center was destroyed, and they were taken into captivity, separated from their land for 70 years, like the Jews were when the first temple was destroyed, they would still keep their identity. Couldn't be such a thing. And sure enough, that's what it was. They restored the glory and the identity of the Jewish people after the first temple was destroyed. And they were the ones who really said, and they started learning Torah. That was the men of the Great Assembly. And they spread Torah all over the world. 1 second. Okay, my friends. So I have to learn with somebody. I thought we would do it at 10:30, but because we've started. Anyway, so that's what the three things are. That's Moshe was the aspect of God. The others were the aspect of the Torah and the Jewish people. And finally, the Anshe Knesset Gadola, they put it into the world so that the world would not have an effect on us, but we would have an effect on the world. They were the ones who really strengthened the oral Torah, the interpretation of the Torah, so that it would be an eternal building that nobody could wreck for the whole. And that's what we have to this day. Why they said these three things about be patient in judgment and make a lot of pupils and make a fence around the Torah. We'll have to talk about that, God willing, next time. God bless you. Have a good week, everybody, and learn Pirke Avot. Maybe you have some questions. You can write to me, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer, especially on Pirke Avot. Have a good week, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Shalom. Will you put this up, Elio?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Shalom. Shavua Tov.
Shabbat Tov.